This is Declan McGonigal with the My Beach Business Podcast, where we talk with local business owners and investors on a variety of subjects. I hope you enjoy the show, and thanks for listening. All right, welcome back to another episode of the My Beach Podcast. We're here with Conrad O'Connell today. He's the owner of Build Up Bookings, a vacation rental marketing agency, and it sounds like you've been in the business for a good time now. Basically, your whole professional life, right, to a point?
Yeah. I mean, basically it all started, I got a job at an agency straight out of college. We were talking about the fact that we're, kind of been here for a while. Yeah. And I started working for an agency when I graduated from Coastal in 2013. And that's been my only professional experience. Yeah. I don't know how to do anything else at this point. So.
Right. Well, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, why don't you give a little bit more background on kind of what Build Up Bookings is and why you got into this world, why you got into marketing and all that?
Yeah, I think for me, it was just always like an interest. I think if you... I think the cliche is kind of true. If you enjoy what you're doing, you're not working. Yeah. But for me, it's just like been this curiosity, I think. That's always how I thought about it. I'm just curious about it, and I want to figure it out. Right. So I think it all started, like I said, probably back in that time frame, even before I was marketing not at the time, but now my father-in-law's business. He had a fishing charter business here locally. Oh, wow. And I was like, we got to figure out how to get, he tried to figure out the website on his own. He tried to figure out ads on his own. And he was making some progress. Yeah. But, once he's like, well, you're going to school for marketing. You figure it out, basically. And when your girlfriend, his dad is like, figure it out. You're like, you try to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
I was like, all right, maybe I can, understand how this kind of stuff works. So really ads was my first thing that I started diving into, Google Ads. And back then there was no competition, which is just funny to think about now. There was 50 people doing it. But back then there was like 2 people doing it. Wow. So it just opened a thread for me. And then I just kind of was like, well, I got to get a job after college. Let me see if I've learned a little bit here. I have this marketing degree. Maybe I can turn it into something. So I went to this agency. At the time, they were just like small, based in Conway. Yeah. And the office was cool. So this seems like a fun place to work. Right. At the time, I was working at Bilo and Main Street before it closed. Big difference. Yeah, and I was like, this sucks. So, anything's better than that. Yeah. And I was like, this looks better. And they'll pay me more money to do it. So it was just a simple kind of process there. So that's how it started. And then from there, just kind of different evolutions. And then I started my own business in 2016. Oh,
very cool. How'd the fishing charter business do? Did you do pretty good with the ads and set it all up and whatnot?
I think so. Yeah. So now it's my brother-in-law's. Okay. So my father-in-law's kind of retired or quasi-retired at this point. He does charter every once in a while. And now it's my brother-in-law's. And it's still doing well. I mean, same, business, kind of same family ownership type thing. But, going back to that earlier commentary, maybe we could talk about it too, is like competition. I think that's one thing that you can always learn in marketing is that when the competition, increases drastically, you've got to figure out how to adapt, and that can be tricky, certainly in our space.
Interesting. So you start off with basically from the get-go, you start off with your own agency, like right after college, right?
No. So at the time I was working for a different one.
Oh, gotcha.
So from 2013, I worked in an agency. Then from 14, then I worked for a different one after that from 15, 16. Yep. And then I started my own app in 2016. Gotcha. So I had kind of 3 or 4 years of experience working for other companies, agencies specifically. And what I've always said is I learned a lot about what to do from those companies. Yep. I also learned a lot about what not to do, maybe from both, kind of bosses or leadership that I've had. And I think that's valuable experience. Like the previous, I've been in the room now with a lot of leaders and a lot of companies in our space, and you can tell the people that haven't had the employee experience, and I think it's kind of valuable actually. Oh yeah, my take on it in our world. To kind of be the lowest ring on the totem pole.
What about where did you learn more? Doing it on your own with the fishing charter, or did you have a mentor maybe at the company you started with? And
well, that's the thing is that all the stuff I did, to get the job was all self-taught. Then I got there and I thought I knew a little bit, and then I realized I knew nothing. Right? As we most often do. And so there was actually someone, that was kind of a mentor in a way when I got to the first agency, and he kind of took me under his wing, and I think maybe he saw some potential, or he saw something that I knew that maybe I could take advantage of and capitalize on. And at the time, he was actually doing kind of funny enough. This is not. He was doing his own lead generation for other businesses. At one point, I think he was one of the largest pool lead. Distributors, if you will, or he was selling pool leads for all these different metros. So he owned sites, and he would own a site like MyrtleBeachPools.com. He got these type of domains.
So pools, swimming pools.
Swimming pool installation. Gotcha. And then they get a lead, and he's like, well, I don't know how to install it, but I'll just sell it to someone that does, and I'll charge them $50 for the lead, and if it converts, they're like, oh, I'm happy to keep buying more leads. So that was his space, and those sites were doing so well at the time. He was actually I'm making more from that than I am from my job. I may quit this job, but let me help you along the way. That was kind of how we started. And I always thought that was so cool that someone was like, wait, you can take these skills and make, and at that time it would have been $5-6 grand a month selling leads. I was blew my mind. I was like, how much money could you make doing this?
Up a whole world.
And then this algorithm update called Panda happened and kind of just crushed me overnight, which also taught me a lesson early in my career of these things with Google at times, they're a little fragile, you know, and you can have something and then that thing can be taken away from you, you know, in that world of marketing. And that's been the case in my whole career. If you look at it, like platforms change, things change. What used to be the case may not work the same anymore, and you've got to adapt. So.
Wow. So how did you make the transition to vacation rentals specifically?
Yeah, so at that first agency, it's actually kind of interesting. We had this client that was a boutique hotel chain, actually down in Charleston. It was kind of where most of their hotels were. And I just thought that was interesting. I was like, you know, because at the time we would do any type of client marketing, right? It was like, I think my boss said, well, if they need our help, like we can help them. You know, if they're local, and we had like doctors and lawyers. We'd marketed Market Common, for example, back when it was a new project back then in 2013. And I was like, okay, like that's fine. Like I was learning there. It was good to like kind of dive into different worlds. Yeah. But we got this boutique hotel chain, and again, I just felt that like pull again, maybe, or it was just interesting to me. So I thought, well, I'm decent at this, and then that's when a different agency reached out to me and said, hey, we're looking for people to join our team. What do you think? Maybe there's an opportunity for you to come. And then I got up there, and he said, well, really, we're now specializing kind of in vacation rentals. That's kind of our focus. Okay. And I said, okay, that's similar, because now I've got some experience working with this boutique hotel chain, and I think there's some similarities between like a 10-room hotel, a 20-room hotel, a small hotel, and a vacation rental. I think there's a lot of similarities there. So I was like, okay, well, I can rely on this experience. Maybe I could go into that world. So that's what kind of led me into it, was working, up in that agency that was specifically focused more on the vacation rental industry, or maybe I'll say was getting there. Maybe they weren't there immediately, but they got there pretty quickly. And then once they were there, then I felt like, okay, now I found something that we talk to a lead, we talk to a customer, and we can identify their problems so much quicker. I felt like when I was at the other agency before, and we'd get, let's just say, a random business, it's like, well, I don't know anything about dentist marketing. Let's go figure it out. And then, all right, I can take my skills and kind of apply it. But there was always like a little bit of learning curve, which I always thought kind of was not great for the client or for us. So I think that specialization mindset,
kind of niching down in the vacation rental speeds it up a bit for you guys. Gotcha. So you moved on from that, and then you opened your own. So you opened up Build Up, right? How long ago was that?
2016.
Gotcha. Okay. And marketing, I feel like, is a broad term, right? What do you, with Build Up, what's kind of the scope? Where does it start and end with you guys as far as the scope of what you do?
Yeah, I think search, social, and email is where like 90% of our efforts and our team and our scope lies usually. We now have website development offerings and services, which we didn't have before. So that's kind of a new thing that we're exploring over the last year or two, and we've now built a lot of websites, and that's been good. But I think at the end of the day, you build a website, whether it's with us or someone else, you've got to then market that website. And search, social, and email are kind of like those three things. And then within search and social, there's kind of a paid and organic component. You can work on just the SEO side, you can work on the paid ad side, but it's still just search is the way that I look at it from like a marketing perspective. So those are kind of the ones that we dove into. And when I go look at our clients' analytics, it's like that's where they get the most traffic from. So it feels right to focus on those three.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to vacation rentals, when it comes to company, how about this? When do you start working with a company? Will you work with smaller companies that maybe don't even have, I guess with the website development now you can do that, but would you start with companies that maybe don't have a direct website? Because that's kind of the starting point, right?
Yeah, I think for a lot of people it is. And I think that from our market, like a services standpoint, we've actually thought a lot about this and like, when's the best time for us to be helping and how can we help people best? And I feel like when people can really invest in marketing services is usually when they're doing roughly $1 million a year of gross booking revenue. Okay. Now, as you know, in this space, right, like that's your cut might be 20% of that, right? So it's really, your business is still pretty small in the grand scheme of things. Okay. But I think that's when you can start to invest in like real marketing services. So I think you kind of have to get to that first, like revenue chunk pretty much by yourself. I mean, you're using OTAs, you might have maybe a basic direct marketing site you could invest into, maybe a few $1,000s. But I don't think, for the most part, someone in that bracket or a little below who's a property manager probably shouldn't be investing a lot into their marketing services. They should be doing them more themselves, figuring some things out along the way. Now, we have done things in the past recently where it's been like hey, let's set things up for you, and then you can kind of run it yourself. But I think it's problematic because these property managers think they have more time than they do have. I can run it myself, and then we give them all the tools, and then they don't really do much with it. So I think for us, like if we talk about like what our ideal client is, they're at $1 million in gross revenue or more, and hopefully that's scaling quickly. Hopefully they're trying to get a much, much greater than that.
Absolutely. So it's more of a done for you is what you prefer sort of service.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's interesting because I love probably more for entertainment value at this point, but I love Gary Vee. I don't know if you ever watch his stuff, but he talks a lot about that same sort of thing. Like, do they control the does his company, do they get to control the creative and the ads? Do they get to control kind of the spend and the creative? And it is a very good point because I think about us. We're probably around that. We're probably around that 2.5 million, 3 million in gross bookings. And I think I'm starting to realize we're at that point where we've got to invest more in the direct, website and whatnot. But definitely it's, there's a lot that goes into it, right? Because we've built the website at first, and I learned this, and it comes to mind because I was listening to one of your podcasts, on the Heads and Beds. At first, I didn't want to add any sort of like additional service fee on our website because I didn't want to, I thought that was a big advantage. Like, we're going to be a lot cheaper than if you just go through Airbnb with the service fee and whatnot. But you've got to make money from the website to invest back into it, right? Kind of talk about the importance of, I think a lot of people here, especially maybe smaller companies, they say, oh, we're going to invest all this money into our website, but are we necessarily making more? Maybe talk about the importance of making sure your fees are set up correctly so that you can invest that money and how much money it kind of takes to really get that website going and whatnot.
Yeah, well, I think ultimately you've got to back in. There's a cost of website. There's a cost of marketing. There's always going to be a cost of marketing, whether you're doing ads or not doing ads. There's a cost of marketing. It could be a person, or it could be. So the way I think about it, could be time, or it could be money, or it could be both. Usually it's both, and there's just some quantity of both in there. Yeah. But as you know, people on your team are probably one of your biggest expenses. So I think someone in your kind of bracket range of where they are right now might go hire someone for marketing too. That's fine, but like that person's not free, right? They're going to take a lot of capital. So it just has to be baked in, to the way that you structure your overall fees and the way that when a booking comes in, we've got to be able to fund that booking so we can go out and get more. I think the one thing that I've seen, unfortunately, over the years is people do get starved, where it's like they're actually making some progress in direct booking. Let's say they're at 20% direct bookings, and they're like, hey, we're getting momentum, we're doing the right thing. And I say, awesome, let's go spend another $2,000 a month on ads. And they sort of skid to a stop very quickly where it's like, I don't know if I really have that. And they've actually set up a bit of a shaky foundation with not having the fee structure correct. You know what I mean? And in my thesis on this, and listeners can learn it, and maybe you've heard on the podcast before, is that the guest has obviously no problem with the service fee because Airbnb is raking in the service fee, right? Whether they charge you or whether they charge the guest, that's how Airbnb makes all its money. Do I think that you should make it less? I do, because I think you still probably want it to be cheaper on your website. But there's not a lot of data to me to indicate that making it a lot cheaper is better than making it just a little bit cheaper. And if you make it a lot cheaper, you basically starve yourself.
Right. Absolutely. And I guess the other point of it too is I think there's kind of you probably, when you're starting off with maybe smaller, newer clients, you probably have to get them over the hurdle of guys, the more we invest, the more we'll make. Right? Is there a hurdle with that where some people come in and they're, well, I can only spend this much, but if we spend this much, we're going to make this much more. Then we can invest more. Is that something you kind of have to?
Yeah, we actually just did a podcast on this recently, actually, where we talked about what are fundamental expenses and what are ongoing expenses. So to do a vacation rental analogy, let's say I give you a brand new oceanfront condo, looks amazing, and there's no furniture in it. Yeah. Well, that could be the best, if there's no furniture in it, we need furniture, right? Those are table stakes to even play the game of marketing and getting people to book that vacation rental, right? So the way I think about it is that's kind of the same thing. If we're trying to get direct bookings, we need some kind of website. We need people to be able to book on that website. Now, do we need to go out and buy the premium Cadillac version of a website at first? Probably not. And that's okay. There's some PMS platforms now there where their template websites are good. I mean, do I think they're great or the best I've ever seen? No, but we have a client that, I shared this on a previous episode, that's using OwnerRez, using a default OwnerRez website that you get for $20 a month, basically, when you sign up for that software, and is doing $40,000 to $50,000 a month in direct bookings off of that. So it's not required for them to get a nicer website. Now, she wants to, and she's considering. We're talking about how to maybe make it better. But obviously, she was able to get to a pretty good level of direct bookings, 30% without having these really expensive infrastructure. So to the analogy, it's could we go get the IKEA couch and put it in there? Yeah, that'll service. Would it be better to go to West Elm and get something really nice? Of course, but maybe you can save that until you've got better.
Build up. Yeah, absolutely. Build up. There we go. But so with those websites, is the template? What's the problem with the template websites? Is it a conversion issue? Are they not designed well where they convert? Or is it a back end sort of SEO issue where it just doesn't rank?
It depends. I think I call these lawyer answers. If you talk to a lawyer, what do they say? You ask them any question, they go, well, it depends.
It's very general.
Yeah, that's how I feel with a question like that. So, no, I mean, some of the website PMS platforms have template websites that are good, that have the right tracking in place. I'll give Guesty credit, for example. I don't know if you're familiar with their platform, but Guesty, their template websites until a few months ago didn't have tracking in place for e-commerce like booking. So we have clients where we were running traffic to their website, and I was I just can't tell you how well exactly it's working. We have to pull reports out of your system because there was no tracking in place. They fixed that recently, so that was a little scab I would pick out about Guesty for a while. They've since fixed that. Some are just very limited, not to call out very specific ones, but Hostaway's websites are not bad per se, but you can't really change it or customize it. You can't modify the layout of how the pages work. So if it's not converting well, you're kind of stuck, right? Like, there's not a lot of tweaking or customization you can do and that sort of thing. So I've learned, unfortunately, over the years that most of these PMS platforms see their website as like, we have to offer it, but they're typically not putting a lot of resources into, making it better, making it a builder, making it tweakable, making it customizable, and they'll kind of give that answer a lot. Well, we have an API. If you want to go do something, do it yourself. Hire a different company. And obviously, that's why web agencies in the space have done well. Is that people have gone to them and said, "Okay, I'll give you a lot of money to make me what I really want because I can't get what I want from a template site."
Gotcha. So, will you help with the sort of design element of it as well? Does Build Up help where if someone comes to you, they've already got a website set up and everything? Will you also help kind of tweak the design and everything so it converts better? I'd imagine that's a pretty important.
Yeah, I think design matters a lot, particularly like as you get more traffic, you may start to see those again, the weak spots come into play where it's like, wow, like our traffic is growing nicely, but our bookings aren't really growing, in accordance with that more traffic. So you might want to look at things from like a design perspective. Gotcha. Or I guess the way I think about it is not just design, because I've seen websites actually that look really pretty, but they don't convert that well. And on the flip side, I've seen sites that are kind of like plain. They don't really have like a lot to them from a design perspective, but they actually convert pretty well because things are clear from like a user experience standpoint, like dates, rates, property detail page, checkout. Like these are simple we think of those as like 4 different page types. There's not a lot to them. But if you do each one of those kind of a little bit suboptimally, it adds up to a pretty bad conversion rate at the end. Okay. Whereas if you think about each of those pages and how they work, then usually you can get a lot better results. Okay.
And kind of a selfish question here, I'm thinking about myself. Where would you start if you're at a point, right, you've got the direct website, what does the path look like to kind of level up slowly and grow and, start with the direct website? From that point, is it pretty important to get into paid ads pretty quickly, or is there stuff maybe you'll just focus on with the SEO and kind of getting the organic ranking better? How what does that path look like?
I think the first 2 steps in both those channels, we can go down search for a moment, the organic side and the paid side, it's actually sounds silly, but just to rank for your company name.
Okay.
So people are searching for the name of your company, and then you obviously have individual brands, if you will, with each property. It's actually, that's your first SEO win, is people just coming off platform, off like Airbnb, for example, searching for the name of a unit, and maybe in your case, or searching for the name of your company, just finding you. So I think people get they try to go, I want to go rank for, North Myrtle Beach vacation rentals. Well, that's competitive. Like you might get there, but it's going to take time, right? Yeah. My first one is like when people search my company name, are people finding me? And that may actually be your first paid search campaign. It's just a branded one, which is $3 a day, $5 a day, nothing significant, but it's like people looking for my company can now find me as much as possible. Right. I'm stacking the top of those search results with my links, not links to competitors or links to OTA platforms or anything like that. And then when they search the name of properties, or in this market, buildings make a lot of sense to me. So focusing on, could I run ads for not North Myrtle Beach but Ashworth, for example? Like that's a path that I've had success with here in this market, because people searching Ashworth actually know what they want more than someone searching North Myrtle Beach vacation rentals. Right. So it's actually more bottom funnel than you think. Yeah. And it's, at this point, it's not less competitive. It's probably just about the same, but the intent is better. So it's going to convert better. So you should have that inventory in place. Okay. And you have a landing page in place. So I think of it as like the closest I can get to someone who's like interested in me. That's what I want to spend my budget on at first. And then I think of it almost like concentric circles. Okay. The further we get out of people searching for like Ashworth, that's like one more circle out. People searching for North Myrtle Beach, that's one more circle out. People searching for like somewhere to go, I want to go to the beach, that's like way out in the ether. You probably should be doing that. Right. So I think of it as like, at first I want to put as a modest budget in place, but the closest possible to the bottom of the funnel. And then once I've got some momentum there, then we can discuss how do we and modify, expand, do more with it. Yeah. So I think that's your first search win, is like branded related or listing related, or in this case, so in this market, maybe it's again resort or like building. Gotcha. Not unit level, but building level. Right? I think those are kind of some of your first few wins. Okay. On the social side, I think it's just strictly retargeting. So we have clients that are coming in new, have a low budget. I'm like, let's just do retargeting. People that already know you, like you, trust you, is the way I've explained to people before. So if they've been on your website, if they stayed with you before, or they already follow you on social media, that's the audience to target at first. Not broadly people in Charlotte, North Carolina, who might or might not come here. Right. That's we'll get to that later, right? Yeah. I think at first you start with people who know, like, and trust you. And I think it's best to do that through retargeting or just those types of offer campaigns. Okay. The other thing you didn't say that I would put early on in that mix for someone, is collecting emails. So particularly when you're getting a lot of email, early momentum or early reservations coming in from the OTAs, like you want to make sure that you're getting their actual email address. As you know, Airbnb and the OTAs give you kind of a fake hashed email where nothing really happens from it. Yeah. So once you have that, then you can market to them through email, and that's kind of the next thing to focus on.
So would you say, is it going back, I guess, going to the niching down point, is it important to be hitting on all these things, like you said, the website, the SEO, the paid ads, organic social media. There's the statefy devices out there where you can collect email. Is it important to be hitting on all those marketing tactics out there when you're getting started, or should you really just focus on sort of mastering one at a time?
Yeah,
that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. I think there's different schools of thought, about it. My take on it would be like, you've got to get there eventually. So get in the car and go as fast as you can to get there. You know what I mean? And it may be like, the paid search example from a few minutes ago. You set it up and you shouldn't have to modify your branded campaign much. You shouldn't have to modify your building level campaigns much. Right. So is there a week period where if you're doing it yourself, you're studying, you're understanding how to do it, you're getting it up and running, and then you need to focus on the next thing? I think so. Yeah. But like the way I look at it is like, if you feel like, all right, I've got this in a good enough spot, it's in like a B+ spot, I can kind of live with that. I did a presentation recently where Dan Kennedy, is like one of the marketing people I follow, talks about the GE zone, which is a good enough zone. And that's where I think we sometimes have to live in marketing, where it's like, in a perfect world, yes, everything would just work flawlessly and we'd have all the awareness and all the attention on us, but we live in the real world with budgets and, we have limited restrictions and things like that. So sometimes you got to get to GE good enough and then move on to the next thing. Like the statefy example is a good one because it's like going installing that in X number of units is a very labor intensive thing to be doing. It's like you have to go plug in hardware to 50 different units. Like that can take time. Now, what I tell clients is like, take your highest occupancy properties and go descending, right? So like start the biggest, go to the smallest. But like that's the order of operations. But just going to take, that could take weeks for it to be all said and done. But then at the end, it's like, man, I'm glad I did that. Now I'm getting new emails coming in every single day that I can market to down.
Right. And it made me think of it because I was on statefy yesterday, and I guess I'm just behind maybe a little bit on some of their updates, but they've got a new sort of, after the guest enters their information, it brings them to a page, and it's a new sort of page, but you've got to set up the photo of the unit on there and the direct link, and there's a little bit that goes into setting that all up. And like you said, it can be a lot of work. So I was kind of wondering, is it worth doing this all now, or should I put it off and focus on other things? So that's a very good point. Going back to sort of the website, and I guess this kind of ties into homeowner marketing as well. Sure. I've seen it where some companies will, like you said, they'll make a page specifically for a building. Is it worth building out and maybe just targeting certain buildings, if you will, for both guests and homeowners? Like, is it worth building out building pages, you think, on your website to kind of rank for those and as people search?
Yeah, I think from a homeowner perspective, I've seen that work before, but obviously it can be tricky just because you might be marketing to like 100 people.
Right.
And so you're having to make a lot of different creative. If you're willing to kind of, again, going back to the earlier commentary of like how good is good enough, is your general, postcard offer something like that going to convert? Or is it better if my postcard offer says something to the effect of, hey, Ashworth, homeowners, we can drive you more revenue by doing X, Y, and Z. That's something you got to test. I've seen examples before, and the marketing brain wants to segment. Marketing brain wants to be, I want that message to match more specifically whenever possible. But I've also seen tests before where by doing that, we slow it down so drastically that we get out so little creative. So I kind of have this like tension or push and pull about that idea at times where I'm like, can we do it? Like, can we do what you're describing? Can we execute on it? If so, let's do it. If we can't and it's going to slow us down, we're going to end up sending out nothing. I think we're better off sending off a more general one. But like thinking about our targets, thinking about our list, going through that process, of course. But I think we're better off doing that than trying to make it, again, back to that comment earlier of like perfect or like good enough and going from there. But on the guest side, I think it's one of the best pages you can do. Absolutely. Because people searching at that level are, again, they're probably like 2/3 of the way down the consideration path of where they want. They already know where they want to go, and like term destination. They know what building they want to stay at. Then it's just a matter of, do your units match up well with the competition? Because they're going to shop at that point. They're going to click on 10 different links. If you we use a tool called Ahrefs for like our search marketing information, and searches on building keywords often have like very high click counts relative to the number of searches occurring. So for example, what that tells me is people are clicking on the search results, going back and clicking on another one, going back, clicking on another one, because they're just looking like, all right, let me see every single unit in this building, and then if I find the best one, that's the one I'll actually book in terms of value.
Interesting. Do you think a lot of guests sort of in their journey, they'll go maybe on one of the OTAs, Airbnb or VRBO, they'll maybe find a unit and it says, hey, we're at this is a condo in the Grand Cayman building, and do you think they then go to Google and search Grand Cayman and then go to whatever website comes up kind of first for that? Do you think that's kind of a common path?
Yeah, I think, what percent of people are doing that? Hard to say, but I know it's there because I know we have clients more in cabin markets, like in North Georgia, for example. and they'll list a new property, and that property will have a unique name. You know, they'll try to make names unique so people aren't searching it.
Yeah.
And then within usually 5 to 7 days of it going live on Airbnb, I'll start to see people searching for that in Google. Because you can look in Google Search Console or even Google Ads, and you can look at search terms and see people searching that cabin name. So a term that didn't exist before, let's say, the example I was giving the podcast, as you know, is like Conrad's Cool Cabin. It's like a fictional cabin. It doesn't exist. But if that term would never existed before, then all of a sudden I list my cabin on Airbnb, and then people start to look for it. It's like that tells me that that's happening at a decent clip. Airbnb calls it off platform, and they do things in their platform to try to like limit it a little bit. Certainly you can't like go on the description and say like, look at my website for better rates. So there's lines that you can't cross, but broadly speaking, like 100% people are doing that, which goes back to my earlier commentary about like make sure your brand is findable and your units are findable on Google, because that can be your first win. That can be your first like 30 direct bookings, or just like people coming off platform. Oh, I found you here. It's better. It's cheaper. Let me book there. Interesting.
Is there any sort of strategy on those OTAs that you can do as far as, because some of our units we don't even have a unique name. We just mentioned maybe the top 4 amenities in the title, right? Or and then some of them it will. Beachcomber Bungalows is one of them. Would you say it's better to have that sort of branded name in the title, and then maybe, I don't know, is there anything you can put in the description that maybe hints to people? Because I feel like people are getting smarter now, right? They're starting to realize, okay, go direct and maybe save a little bit or get this benefit or that benefit. Is there anything you can do on the OTAs? I know it's a fine line.
Yeah, in my mind, it doesn't have to be title. And we have clients that never do anything in the title, and they still get a decent amount of off-platform kind of searches occurring. I think it's actually that first line in the description. Welcome to Beachcomber, hosted by My Beach Vacations. Right? I think it's that first line of the description. First thing they see is welcome to property name, hosted by company name. We've written descriptions like that are just very simple, very straightforward. You could leave some additional.
Then you have that same thing on your website, obviously. And that's what. Okay, gotcha.
And then there's like a better message match there. And I think it's a smaller thing. We just redid this for a client recently. We redid all of their title tags on their property detail pages. So you'd be surprised how bad some of the title tags are of these property detail pages, or it might say something like that. It might just say like Unit 1207 is the title tag. I'm like, well, that's useless.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Let's try Unit 1207 Grand Cayman, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, dash My Beach Vacations. Let's get all that information in there. And then people see, oh yeah, that's the company I looked at. That's where the brand comes into play. I think.
So are people? Sorry to interrupt, but are people copying that like first line and then searching for it?
I think so.
I've never even thought about doing that. Oh gosh, that's genius.
And I know that to be true actually, because we have a client who's trying to shorten up his character count. So the name of his company, it's a case study on the website now, so I could say it, is Mountain Mama Vacations. That's kind of like the name of the company. But he used to just say Mountain Mama on like his hosted by Mountain Mama, and that's where all his brand searches work. People searching Mountain Mama, not Mountain Mama Vacations, and then he swapped that, and then like a few days later, maybe 10, 14 days later, all the searches started trending towards that. So people
are giving me actual stuff, man. I've got something that says the My Beach Way, and then it lists out like certain amenities and whatnot. But now I'm going to change that to our full name just to make sure we're covering that base, because My Beach is kind of a general. I'm sure we're missing a lot of people in that.
It's a little more general, which it doesn't mean that you can't get there, but it's just going to take a little bit more time. And we did an episode a while ago about branding and naming your company, which is something that people, sometimes people don't think about it. I mean, this is a newer trend of having like kind of these types of names. I mean, a while ago, when I first started in 2014, people would name their company like Myrtle Beach Vacation Rentals. There's a company here called that, right? And it's just like, oh yeah, like I'm going to get the exactmatch.com domain name. I'm going to get some traffic that way. And they're not wrong. Like you can get some traffic from that. But I think over time, you don't want a brand like that. You want a brand that people can search for, that you own, that you kind of can dominate that search result. People are looking for you, and it might just take time to build.
So that's a really good point. How specific does that brand name need to be, right? Because My Beach is kind of a unique name, but I also get a lot of people that say, "Oh, are you Myrtle Beach Vacations?" So it kind of the My and I guess Myrtle, that they kind of go hand in hand. In like a beach market, should just about everyone here has something beach rentals or beach blah 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 vacation rentals or something, right? Should you have that in your name so that people can relate you to the beach, or is it more important to go super unique where maybe it's like Storybook Vacation Rentals or something, or something very unique?
My personal bias is I would try to go for the more unique angle myself personally, just because if I was picking a name from scratch and I had no previous history to consider or think about, I would want something really unique that no one's ever looked for before. So that way it's going to be easy for me to start to create brand searches, and people are going to find me right away. So, but that's my marketing brain working. I think there's a lot of successful companies in our space that have beach names and then are branded in that way, and they've done phenomenally well. So by no means do I think that's like a limiting factor. I think where it could be a limiting factor is like trademark issues. Like we've had clients, deal with that before. We dealt with a client a while ago who was adamant that it was okay for him to use like Disney in his brand name. He's down in Central Florida, and I'm like, my guy, you are not going to do well with that long term. Like, when the mouse's lawyers find it, they're going to get you.
Right.
And so I actually didn't want to do a logo for him. I'm like, I'm not going to do a logo for you because I'm like, there's a small chance, but there's a chance this will come back on us. So it's like we're the ones making this creative asset that you're then going to use to like trademark confuse people. So I'm like, I'm not going to do this for you. And then he ended up changing his name on my kind of advice because I'm like, don't mess with the mouse. Like, the mouse is going to win.
Oh yeah, always the mouse always wins, man. They've got a lot of money behind the mouse. So you could have a really unique name then and still rank fine if someone searches like North Myrtle Beach Vacation Rentals, right? Because that's what the content on your website and everything you put on the SEO side.
And we see a lot of unique names in our space. Like Picasso is kind of a fake word, right? Like, and they've done well from a search perspective. We could comment on their owner retention, a different episode maybe. But they've done well from that perspective. Sonder is obviously a company more in like urban markets, but like that's just kind of a simple one word name. I think those can work well. I think, again, I could toss you a link to the show notes for people to listen to that episode on branding and naming. But there's a book called Hello, My Name is Awesome. And I would say that book is the one to read because it walks you through kind of like how to pick a name. And I think it still applies even if the company is named. Each unit might need a unique name. You know what I mean? And sometimes the homes more so maybe than the condos. Maybe the condos don't need a name. Maybe it's okay for it to be Unit 1107 because the building is the name. But it's one of those situations where you might want to consider it when you're naming houses. And so people do all the same thing around here with puns and just funny little, turns of phrases. Stuff like
is there an effective way to find like a unique name for a house? Because
I use ChatGPT, honestly. I think that's like a great tool. Like you give it a bunch of training data, like you copy and paste a bunch of names from your competitors and be like, I can't use any names like this, but give me 20 that are similar to this, or give me 100 that are similar to this. And honestly, ChatGPT, I think, is the best brainstormer you can have nowadays.
Wow. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because we can just think of things.
I use it, but that's a good point about putting in the ones that you can't use. Right. Because there's so many. I mean, I feel like we have some unique ones, but what do we have in this market? Like 17,000 rentals or something. Like you're bound to have some overlap no matter what you do, I guess.
Yeah, that's very challenging. And I think the only way you can do it is maybe prefix it with something, so you have something that's more unique to you or something like that. But I don't envy that job. Like if we've had clients ask us before, and I used to think it was simple. Early in my career, I was like, no, this can't be that hard. Come on. And then once I started realizing that the unique name is what mattered, I'm like, gosh, this is challenging. I spent hours to come up with it. Now I think ChatGPT can be a good assist for you. But you almost have to build like a reference list to give it. As like, again, you can't use these names, but find names similar to this, and then here's some info of the property, here's the location, stuff like that. I've seen a lot of people use like street names in the property names, which I think is cool because like that's going to make it a little bit less. Like the pool of available names is going to go down because not as many people are going after the street name stuff. So. I've seen some success.
So would you have every property have a unique name then?
I think for homes, Gotcha. For condos, I'm kind of split because, like I said, you might want to be careful because if you're naming a condo, people might then get that condo confused where you lose that building into, which sometimes can be really strong. So if you overly name the condo, unit itself to something XYZ, Beachcomber, or blah blah blah, but then they're looking for the Prince Resort or Ashworth or something like that, you may find yourself in a tough spot because then you're not able to market the building as much as that unit. So I'm kind of torn on that. I think it's something you'd have to test and see what's going to work best.
See what's more effective. Gotcha. What about organic social media? Is there how much value is there in that? I think there's a lot of value, but obviously it's a very long play, right? And then what type of content can you do in your organic social media?
Yeah, I've kind of changed my tune on this over the years. I mean, I think my early thesis on it was looking at analytics data and being well, most people don't come from social and book, which is 100% true. People don't come directly from Facebook and then make a reservation with the property manager, right? It happens, but it's less common as we run a lot of ads now. Like I said, I think I've changed my approach a little bit. I think you want attention. You want awareness. So I think in that vein, it's if we're creating positive attention and positive awareness on social, and then we can tie our company into it, I'm a lot more bullish on that strategy going forward. So, for example, this was the thing that Southern did before they were acquired. They would look at someone checking in their lobby, and then it was they did this campaign for a while. They would give one person a free vacation and then film it and put that on social media. So they got all this attention, oh, that's so amazing, it was so cool for you guys to do that. All this free reach basically from something that yes, it cost them $1,000. They lost that revenue obviously by doing that. But the reach they got from it and goodwill they got from it was so positive that the net effect from a branding perspective was very positive. So I think my take on it is Instagram is completely video. So I think if you're not doing videos on Instagram, you can get some level of success. And we have clients that don't give us a lot of video, and we post images, and we get there, but it's not nearly as good as having video. So I think you want to be video first, and I think you want to kind of have depending on your brand and your personality and how you want to perceive it, I think you want to have fun with it. I think you want attention at all costs. Really, that's what works well on social. Hopefully in a positive way. And I think doing things like that are better than just the classic featured listing, featured listing, featured listing, featured listing.
That's what it's so easy to do that because we have the photos and it's like, oh, we'll just make a slideshow. But it, like you said, it never performs well. So what's I guess the intent with social media? Is it, or the organic social media? Is it we're trying to get guests that come and stay with us, follow us, and then kind of, I guess in a way like retarget to them just with your feed and whatnot? Mm-hmm. Or is it more so that we're maybe doing Facebook Reels or Instagram Reels or whatever it's called, where you have more opportunity to kind of get outside of your followers?
Yeah.
What's the kind of the idea with social media?
Yeah, I think you want both in a perfect world. Like, people who follow you should hopefully be following you and care about what you're saying for a reason, right? I think that's one side of it. And then I think you definitely want, to be expanding that pool of people over time so that as you go along, you're getting more reach along the way. Gotcha. So, yeah, I think the answer is both.
Is there any good, we struggle to get like people to engage with us on social media. Is there any good strategy you have to kind of get engagement or get them to follow you or vice versa?
Yeah, I think this is where ads can be critical because you probably do want to be targeting, going back to my earlier comment of like getting the email addresses. Now I can reach out to them and ask them to follow us, right? If they didn't have a reason to before, or that I couldn't pitch it the right way before, now I have at least a little window of an opening to do it. So I think that's a good way of like maybe your first email when they log in, arrive in, your first safe email while they're still on property is, oh, by the way, follow us and send us a message. We'd love to hear from you, that sort of thing. Okay. That can be a way to like get someone to actually engage with you a little bit in that way. Advertising people that have been on your website, getting them to like your page on Facebook, that's feasible. If they've been on your website, getting them to like see your Instagram profile. Again, you can't make them follow you on Instagram ads, unfortunately, but you can get them to at least view the profile. And then I think they're probably making the decision to engage or not based on the content. So I think I would look at it from like, at some point you need to have some critical mass, if you will, of like people actually following you to see some level of engagement, obviously. But once you're at, let's say, 1,000 or 2,000 followers, like that's enough people where you can tell if you put out content, if people care about it or not. Right?
Gotcha. I see. That makes sense. What about going to the homeowner side? I'm going back to this sort of niching down idea. Is it on the homeowner side? Is it better to go down? I listen to Alex Hormozy. I don't know if you listen to him, and his things like more, better, new. Do more of it. Do more, whatever your sort of marketing plan is, do more of that, and then try to do it better. And then once you've kind of maximized those two, then do something new. With the homeowner marketing, I feel like the basic stuff is, paid ads, direct mail, and realtor referrals. Those are kind of, I feel like, the foundational pieces. Is it important to be doing all of those, or should you, if you're just getting started, should you start on just doing, let's say you're getting started, but you have somewhat of a decent budget. Should you just focus on just doing one of those, or should you get into all of them from the get-go?
Yeah, my take on the thing, Paul and I have done a lot of episodes about homeowner marketing because he's more savvy on that because he's been working with inventory for several years. Is I think the problem is actually two things that we pick out a lot is the believability of the copy on the postcard or the offer in general is not great. Gotcha. Right? So people send these postcards and now these homeowners get inundated with postcards and they all say the same thing, which is that I'm going to make you more money. I'm going to make it easy on you. I'm going to, send you a check every month. You're going to not have to lift a finger. I have great customer, it's all the same stuff. So over time, it just kind of washes over you. It's like how you feel a lot of advertising. Like, I think one thing I'll say to, clients or, property managers, I'm like, think of ads that you ignore in your own life. That's how your customer or potential customer feels about your ads. Just ignoring them. These aren't good. Like, there's nothing about them. So I think the one thing that people don't do a good enough job of is actually describing what they do and making it kind of like a package or making it something specific. So for example, I worked with a client a while ago in homeowner, and I was like, what do you do? Like, if you sign into a property, walk me through everything you do in the property. And he was like, oh, well, I have to inventory the property. I got to photograph it. I got to deep clean it. I got to put smart locks in place. And he starts going on this list and he actually showed me like a checklist, and I was like, why don't you talk about that in any marketing? Why is it not free smart home package if you sign by, November 1st of this year? And then show a picture of the smart lock and then show a picture of this and a picture of that. Or we'll put new TVs in your unit for, the big game or something like that. If you sign by February, whatever, we'll put new TVs in your unit so people can enjoy
sort of unique offer.
Something, right? Like I think it breaks through the noise. I think what most people just don't see a lot of is anything unique in that space. There's this Gary Halpert thing about you get your mail and there's an A pile and a B pile. And an A pile is something you care about, and a B pile is something you're like, it's an ad, I don't care. And the first test is like just getting them to put it in the A pile. Never mind actually read it or engage with it or care about it. It's like there's just two piles sitting there. And so often I think people grab that thing and they just drop it in the B pile. They don't even get to the back of it. Right.
So
we've had clients that have actually run plain white envelope campaigns that have done better. So they open it and it looks like a more personal addressed email, even, or a mail, I should say. It's email is my brain. Mail, even though it's not, because it gets put in a pile if it looks like it's written and there's nothing on it. Plain white envelope on the outside, plain stamp on the left corner, nothing there. And then they open it and they engage with it. At least I got a chance, right? Like in that scenario. So I think direct mail is really hard, to be honest with you, because targeting is easier than ever. That's a plus. But standing out, because it's now easy, is harder because you've got Vacasa that's got unlimited. It feels like direct mail budget. You've got all these people, and sometimes they can make a better offer than you. Vacasa's one of their tests that was running for a really long time is they were offering $5,000 bonuses for people signing at this thing. In this market, you know, there's people that are in this market competing that will offer a 3% commission for the first year. You know, so that's a really tough hook, you know, to compete against unless you got something better. And really differentiating your company, really standing out, I think is really hard in direct mail. But it's like, to your point, without doing it, like, you have to rely on these other channels. So the plus about a realtor referral is that they're kind of tied in a little bit more to you. There's a little bit, if they trust that realtor and that realtor did a good job, then they refer you over. It's like, hey, maybe they're not the biggest, but they are the best. Like, that person is coming in with some perceived level of, like, this person knows what they're doing, there's some authority there. And then I think it's, of course, like all things services, it's an impression thing. How does that first, 9, 10, 15 days of interaction go? Did I get my projection back too quickly? Did I follow up? All the basics at that point. So, yeah, I think to your point, those are great examples from Hormozi, and I can't disagree with any of them. I think most people just don't have a compelling enough offer, or they don't have a believable offer. I think that's where that falls down, is that people look at it and just washes over them because there's nothing good about it.
Have you had to help clients kind of come up with those sort of marketing uniques or whatever you want to call them to figure those out? Because I feel like that's another tough thing for companies. Like you said, sometimes a lot of companies, they do this, they may do very similar things, but trying to figure out maybe what you do differently can be tough sometimes because you're in it, right? You're kind of, is it imposter syndrome? There's some sort of phrase for that where you're in it, you don't really realize everything.
Like blindness almost.
Yeah, right. And I've talked to friends and I've told them, different things about what I do. And I'm like, and they're like, oh, that's really interesting. I had no idea about that, dude. You sound very knowledgeable. And I'm like, to me, that's just like the basics.
That's like Tuesday.
But, yeah, it's Tuesday. You just get lost in kind of like, this is what I do. I don't think this is unique in any way, but to some people it may be very unique. Do you have to help people sometimes figure out what those are?
Yeah. I call this mattress store marketing. So when do you need to buy a mattress? When do you just need to buy it? But what do mattress stores always have? Some kind of marketing sale, right? Like as we record this, it's October, right? So it's like, sure, let's do the Halloween sale. They just make stuff up out of nothing. So I think sometimes that's what you have to do. I think urgency is an underrated tool in homeowner marketing. Sign by this day and I give you X, or I give you Y, or I give you Z. I think a lot of people don't do that. Whenever you're ready. But
so maybe it's not even that the company has to have a unique proposition. Maybe it's just a unique offer that they're running.
Right. And then when you find something that works, like all things marketing, we've got to beat it in the ground until it stops working.
Right. Yeah.
The plain white envelope campaign that we were running for a while was working, and then eventually stopped working, so we stopped. So because it was new, it was novel, it worked. And then like anything, marketing it sort of tails off, right? But for a while it worked. So why not lean into that? If Vacasa had that $5,000 sign-on bonus, that they stopped doing it. So I'm assuming what happened was not that it wasn't working when they were running it, but like anything, it tails off. So I think that's why I call it mattress store marketing, because you just got to kind of come up with new stuff on the homeowner side of things. And I think people don't often work much on their current list or their current persona that they could be marketing to. So for example, we have a client who he has homeowners in a room like this, and he's like, could you record a quick video for me, testimonial? Because me putting a pull quote for me on the page that says I'm John Doe and Jane Doe and Declan's got my property here and he does a good job, that's cool. But what's better? You look in the camera and saying it. That's more believable than text on a page. Right. So that's a good example of just going and getting one homeowner testimonial a month, for the next year. Now you've got 12 you didn't have before. That's going to make your landing page work better.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's all these little things that I think kind of add up.
Yeah, I feel like there's a ton of opportunity with video, right? Where I just put a video on my website that's kind of like a case study type thing on the homeowner funnel. I started to think maybe we could do some videos with like Facebook ads. It's possible to do videos on Facebook ads, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think the one thing that people don't do enough of, actually, by the way, I still think there's a gap in almost every market, is giving the update of the market and being the authority in that respect. So I think this is more common in the real estate world, but in the vacation rental world, there's very few people who are like, hey, here's what's happened. We're recording this beginning of October. Here's what happened in September here in the Myrtle Beach market. Here's what we see. Here's our trends that we see. Here's AirDNA data. Here's key data dashboard data, whatever you have, summarizing and recapping it and sending it to everybody. Hey, this might be of interest to you. You could send that to realtors. You could send that to whoever. And then it's not salesy, it's not pitchy. Like you could have your logo in the background, that sort of thing, right? But it's just more like, here's what's going on, here's what I'm seeing. You're recording, you're giving information, you're giving knowledge, and you got to make it short. You can't make a 25-minute video, right? You've got to kind of like hit the bullet points and then kind of move on. But I think that's what people don't do much of in most markets, and I think that's like a gap in almost every market.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And how would you distribute that? Through email and even Facebook groups and that sort of stuff?
Yeah. I think you want it.
Oh, you probably run an ad.
Yeah, 100%. You could actually run that, and then you could take all your homeowner target lists, do a accurate append match, and try to get their emails. I mean, you're going to get about 40% of them, but then just target all those people and basically be like, here's the market update. Here's what happened in September, in the broader Myrtle Beach market with respect to demand, and then maybe a few bullet points in that ad of like, here's what we saw, like more below, and then embed that video natively on that platform. I think that's one thing. If you're studying these guys like Hormozy and Gary Vee, is like they're going to tell you to be as native to that platform as you can be. So don't link to your website, right? Like we're going to lose them. We want it to be like they can just watch that video right there.
I see. You want to keep them on that. Okay, that makes sense.
Because that's what the platforms want, right? So like when it comes to just that type of thing, where it's like thought leadership, knowledge, here's what I just want people to see this thing. We got to make it as native to the platform as possible, right? Then at the very end, you could be like, hey, go to my beach,
go to there. Maybe once you have a little bit of trust built in. Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Well, good deal, man. I think we covered a lot there. Is there anything else you think that's important to kind of talk about, or maybe that you're seeing on like the guest or homeowner side that's big right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think Paul and I have done a lot of episodes recently more about like, I guess like philosophy, not so much tactics. Maybe we would come back and do like a more tactical episode on like, here's just things we see working well. Like I said, that white envelope campaign was doing well for a while for a client. We had a client doing outbound texting for a while. It was really working well. And I think that's still continuing to do well, not quite as well as first. That's the thing too, when you try a new marketing tactic or technique or anything, sometimes you do get this little early rush, this early high of like, because you found all the willing people, right? And then it's like the real test of things sometimes is like 4 months later, is it still working? Well, I kind of now reaching people who are a little bit less willing, that sort of thing. But no, I think that I think we covered well. I mean, I could sit here and talk all day on marketing, but I want to be respectful of length.
Absolutely. No, it was good, man. I appreciate you coming on and kind of talking and. Thanks again. Where can people find you? What's your website, socials? What's the...
Yeah, I'm most active on LinkedIn, actually. So if you're looking for like personal social stuff, like that's kind of where I'm most active there. Again, knowing where your audience is, kind of back to that earlier commentary, we try to use that same thing in our own marketing. But buildupbookings.com, people can click getting started in the top right corner. Last year I wrote a book, Mastering Vacational Marketing. You can search that, find that on Amazon. If you want to like the $15 version, go to the book. I think I've got a lot of good stuff in there. If you want us to potentially chat with people, buildupbookings.com, click getting started, and we can chat with people from there.
Awesome, man. He's got a great podcast, Heads and Beds, in the Heart of Hospitality. Two really good ones. I love podcasts. The way to go. They're the best. I think they're so good for consuming information. And I think to your point, I think the more tactical stuff, I think that stuff's so good. Yeah. When I listen to somebody that's given like a ton of value, I just have a ton of respect for them, and I want to use their I want to figure out how I can use their service, right? Yeah. Especially when people are open and willing to share. So, awesome stuff. Well, I appreciate you coming on again.
Cool, man.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like this podcast, subscribe if you can, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks.